don't have enough families and children to continue as a nation.
There is one critical outcome that liberal individualism has completely failed to deliver, and that is babies.
We want to produce babies in this country, right? We want to produce babies.
Everybody, I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take 2. You guys, this is one of the very last videos that I'm going to shoot from my bedroom here. So we're about to see the end of laundry and potentially Kevin taking a nap in the bed because my 21-year-old daughter, Chloe, is moving out today. Over on my TikTok, I've done a handful of videos about just how sad it is and how hard it is to watch your kids leave the nest, but also how exciting it is to see them go make their own way in the world. So as soon as she's out this weekend, we're going to turn that third bedroom in our tiny little apartment into my studio. So stay tuned for that. Today's topic is population shrinkage, birth strikes, and whether or not we should be using our lady parts to support an oversized industrial complex anyway. I don't know if any of you feel like this, but sometimes I think my algorithm has multiple personalities. My feed will have posts about birth strikes, the 4B movement, overpopulation, feminism, things like that, and being single by choice. But then also give me posts full of huge Mormon families and news stories shouting loudly about how the fertility crisis is causing imminent human extinction. And I often find myself wondering, which is it? Are we over or underpopulated? Are women having too many babies or not enough? And what should we be doing about it? I did a deep dive into this topic just for you, and I came back with some answers. This talking point interests me on a deeply personal level. I was a Mormon trad wife for most of my life until recently, and I pushed my uterus to the max for Heavenly Father, the Mormon Church, and America until I left the church and lost my uterus and became the informed feminist that you see before you today. So I kind of have a vested interest in this question, having lived both lives myself, thus the Life Take 2. I mean, obviously I have children, and here's Chloe is about to leave me, and my other daughter, Brenna. I raised a lot of kids. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And now I'm just going to have one at home, and I'm very much focused on things besides kids. But this question is personal for me. Are we having too many babies or not enough? How many should we be having, and why does anyone care? Shouldn't it be a personal choice? First, let's take a peek at the numbers to answer whether or not birth rates are in fact declining. Turns out they are. This is crazy. In early 1800, when America was just a little baby country, the average woman gave birth to 7.04 children. That's a lot of kids. Obviously, this is before birth control. A lot of babies. A low point for childbirth was during the Great Depression, with an average of 2.22 births per woman. And then post-World War II, the baby boom saw 3.62 babies per woman. We stayed fairly steady at what is considered repopulation numbers, where every woman is giving birth to 2 children, and you need 2 because that replaces both the man and her male partner. So 2 is considered repopulation. And we stayed at that number for a long time. But then things got wonky. As of 2023, the average woman is only having 1.61 babies. In case you want the exact number, there were 3,596,017 babies born in the United States in 2024, compared to 3,666,758,000 births in 2022. So yes, our population is declining, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that decline coincided with social media, which allows moms like me to tell other women about how hard motherhood is. There are all these hashtags: regretful motherhood, birth strike, West 4B, X-trad, or the pandemic, which gave women so many great work from home options, which made us decide to leave those crappy marriages and focus on being happy for once instead of just popping out babies. But again, isn't the choice to have children or not a very personal, individual choice, which nobody should care about but the woman who bears and cares for the babies? The short answer to that is childbirth hasn't been a personal choice for many thousands of years. Women were literally viewed as and used as breeders, expanding populations and slave numbers and armies and royal families. The men in charge of nations don't have uteruses and had to borrow ours any ways they could, whether that was force, bribery, chivalry, sometimes romance. Civilized societies have always had a vested interest in a high birth rate, and that's no different today. You want to know who's talking about population shrinkage, extinction risks, and dangerously low birth rates? The business owners and the government. Full stop. End of story. We could just end the video here. The Congressional Budget Office is obsessed with birth rates, talking about how fertility impacts things like our economic forecast, financial projections, the workforce. We have J.D. Vance saying publicly that a woman who doesn't use her lady parts to have her baby isn't a real American. On the other side, we have real-life women and children and men who care about women and children, and they're using opposing terms like birth strike, overpopulation, and parenting capacity. Here's the deal. Civilization in its earliest days was amazing. Just the very act of civilizing and building fences and buildings and having granaries where we could store food, jumping from just hunting and gathering to agriculture and having some form of government and stability, it took us out of the chaos of the wild earth and put us in a more ordered and predictable situation. It was absolutely amazing. It provided the tools to make human life better. Humans combining resources, engaging in social contracts for mutual protection and well-being. This was the case for a really long time. Civilization had more benefits than it had risks or costs. But at a certain point, we humans became the slaves to the civilization, and we all turned into ants in a freaking anthill. And as we women bear the burden of the population expansion to support the infrastructure, the economy, and the physical and intellectual labor required to maintain the developed world. In America and other places today, many women are doing so as single moms with minimal resources, and we don't get anything out of it except for the joy of motherhood. My Navajo friend looks at life from a very different vantage point. Because the Navajos have always lived in a more nature-based society, with attunement to nature leads to prioritizing sustainability. As Americans, we pushed industrialization hard to become a world superpower in just a handful of generations. Why? Simple answer is there's more profit in it. And our society isn't exactly built around human health and happiness. It's built around profit margins. Economic forecasts. From the very beginning, the United States has been called the land of opportunity. What opportunity, you might ask? Financial opportunity. And here's the natural consequence of that. Each new human is a lifelong customer from cradle to grave. And literally everything in our lives has been monetized. From our mother's pregnancy, when we're just gestating in the womb, our births are monetized. There are hospitals and doctors. Some of my richest friends are OBGYNs, nurses. Everybody's making money off of the birth of a baby, which used to be a very natural, organic, and non-monetized event. For just a little compare and contrast between my childhood in the early 70s and some of the kids in my life today in 2025, when I was a kid growing up, sports was the occasional school team that cost my parents absolutely nothing, zero. We just had to have a good pair of tennis shoes. And basketball in the neighbor's driveway with their hoop that was mounted to the roof. On summer days, all the kids would find a baseball bat and a ball, and we'd go up to an old baseball field in the park up the hill from my house. That was sports. That was my entire athletic exposure. Compare that to my stepkids, who are in club teams that cost thousands and thousands of dollars per season. These facilities where the teams have their tournaments are absolutely mind-boggling. Everybody is getting rich off of these kids who want to play. Our relationships are monetized. We pay for Tinder, then buy Valentines and other gifts for our loved ones instead of just giving them our loves. And when we get engaged, who came up with the 3-month salary for a diamond ring thing? It's absolutely ridiculous. And then the wedding dress and the invitations and the honeymoon and all the other stuff. Even human love has been hijacked for profit. We don't build our own homes, and instead we pay our mortgages well into retirement. We don't grow our own food. We can't pull our own water from our own wells or rivers. We used to bury our own dead. Can't do that anymore. Funerals cost a freaking fortune. I can't go sit by a river here in Tucson, Arizona, without paying an entrance fee to the state park. My kids can't talk to their friends without expensive iPhones and Snapchat. Life used to be all DIY. And now it's being packaged and sold to us, and everything we do as humans is making someone else profit. I'm making AdSense money right now just for sharing my thoughts with you. Have you heard of the pronatalist movement? This group is maxing out their wombs on purpose to support all this, to support capitalism, to support profit, to support the monetization that is foundational in modern American industrialized society. And they really believe that they can save America and the human race by doing so. Check this out.
This is Malcolm Collins. Malcolm and his wife Simone are authors, private equity investors, and venture capitalists based in Pennsylvania. Earlier this year, they welcomed their amazingly named fourth child, Industry Americas, into the world. But if a family of 6 sounds like a pretty full house already, they don't plan to stop there.
We're going to have more than 7 if we can, basically, until my uterus is forcibly removed in a botched surgery. I'm going to keep going.
If you keep even vaguely up to date on the news, you've likely seen the Collinses about before. They've been interviewed a lot over the past few years, in newspapers, on podcasts, on TV. And that's because the Collinses aren't just planning to have lots of kids simply because they're fond of children. No, they're the leading lights of a niche yet vociferous movement which they call pronatalism.
So the Pronatalist Foundation, which we run, says no matter what, we are going to have demographic collapse in the developed world, and it will wreak havoc on the economy. Our goal as an organization is to preserve as much of our existing human diversity as possible into the future.
Their core belief is that the greatest threat currently facing humanity is not climate change, inequality, zoonotic disease, or any of the usual concerns you might hear raised about our crisis-stricken world, but instead, declining birth rates.
It's so much worse than people think. So if you look at the United States, if you project forwards the decline in fertility rate we have had in the past 10 years, and you assume one generation every 30 years, for every 100 Americans, there's only going to be around 4.3 great-grandchildren.
The Collinses aren't alone in harboring this fear that humanity might be on the brink of dying out. Pronatalism has become a highly fashionable thought trend in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk has repeatedly stated that what he calls population collapse represents an existential threat to humanity, a position which appears to have factored into his own decision to have fathered 12 children at time of recording. From there, the belief that we urgently need to boost birth rates has become a recurring theme both in the contrarian podcast sphere and in formal conservative politics.
I don't know. I think it's all very weird, and it's utterly unsustainable. And I, as a woman who was once a breeder in the American population expansion movement, am a little fed up. My life as a Mormon tradwife was unbearable. In an article for the Times last year, with Ballerina Farm and Megan Agnew as the interviewer, the husband of Hannah Nealman said that Ballerina Farm Hannah will often collapse in bed for a week at a time from pure exhaustion. How could she not? Look at all the stuff she's responsible for. And it's really important to point out that this is not just a family that we're seeing on screen. This is just the perfect example of what I'm talking about, of this industrialized family mixed up with capitalism and monetization type of thing that is just really the bedrock of America today. They're not just growing food for their own family and local customers to make a living. They're monetizing every minute of their lives, from baby births and the clawfoot to grandpa's funeral, to get rich. Rich. And they're also working for the Mormon Church, which has been hyperfixated on rapid membership expansion since the beginning, even going so far as to implement polygamy in order to boost their numbers. Okay, but back to the women. None of any of this is actually healthy for the women. Overcapacity parenting is hard on the body and just hard overall. I know. I've been part of raising 4 bio kids, 1 foster child, 3 stepkids, and was a big sister in a big Mormon family growing up. Especially in our American nuclear family model without grandparents and the rest of the tribe in the picture, raising kids today can be soul-crushingly hard. And it doesn't need to be. Here's my thoughts. Declining birth rates isn't a negative for the human race, it's a positive. It shows that for once, we're maybe listening to a little bit of our raw, wild instincts, rebelling just a bit from the slavery of industrialized corporate capitalism and working on a redirect, a very necessary reboot. I personally don't want my kids to be the slaves to their jobs and consumerism the way I had to be. And they don't want it either. My Gen X kids are literally waiting for us Gen Y, boomers, and millennials to go extinct so they can reset to a less consumeristic society. I don't think the answers lie in the past. I think we need to rip off that collective rear view mirror, throw it out the window, and look out the windshield at where we're going as a society with the knowledge and the understanding that we have, which some of those in our past simply didn't. Make America Great Again? It was a disaster, but I think we're getting there. I really do. I'm personally sick to death of my whole life being one giant transaction ship, and I would die for close relationships instead with other humans and with the world around me. So yes, I am absolutely in support of birth strikes, West for Bees, single cat ladies, childless married women, and whatever you want to do with your womb, because it's about time that we took control of our own body completely and that we have children for the reasons that humans should have children, which is because we can handle it, because we love them, because we want them, not because we're under societal pressure to keep the economy going for the boys at the top. For more of my thoughts on this topic, which includes some things that I just simply can't say in a YouTube video, check out my Substack article called Power, Priesthood, and Pussy, and my other article, What Happens When the Breeders Rebel. Those links are in the description. And now I'd love to hear from you. Are you worried about this shrinking birth rate? Or do you think it's a win for womankind? I'll be hanging out in the comments.